Okay, so this one's perfect because I already know what is in two of these. So we're gonna start, and we're probably gonna just full listen to this one, and then we'll just let the other ones kind of pick it up from there. Yeah, I'm gonna get fries. I've decided. It's fry time.
Well, it's Sunday. How am I doing? How do I feel? I feel like that's the question I'm going to be asked. It's good. My hair's growing, which is nice. It's doing the everywhere, everything all at once thing, which I love.
I do love that.
I've been, let's see, how have I been? What have I been
How
doing?
have you been? What have you been doing?
I want to be like, I've been taking my medicine, which, if we're talking about
Take your
meaningful
medicine.
relationships and deep internal work, I guess I have been.
Oh, good. That's what I hoped you meant.
But to me, medicine feels like rain, and it's been raining, so
That's for
it's
sure.
been nice.
And fog.
I stayed up all night planning to make this episode so that it would come out at midnight, the way my episodes come out when I schedule things. And I was going to be cool and just like make it at 10:30 p.m. have it scheduled for midnight and be like, yeah, I did it, got it all sorted, did my hour of vlogging for the day. But I didn't feel like it, and I had eaten too much food. That's kind of my weekend, eating too much food and not moving a whole lot, to be honest. Slumps are how I cope.
That's for sure.
What else? I've been catching up on my comic book stories while I have access to HBO. I don't anticipate having eternal access, so I've just been running through all the stories that I miss. I love comic books as a narrative format, and generally their stories, like comic book stories in movie or in book format, are wonderful human narratives. Somehow you take superheroes and you still make them emotionally relatable and evocative and just show the humanity in people despite having powers or things that make them different. Tragic origin stories. I think superhero stories have been giving generations of people some positive ways to reimagine tragedy, so they're one of my favorite go-to forms of storytelling, but I haven't been completely caught up on Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, any comic book universe ever in my life, which I guess it would be like pretty impressive if I was. And of course I'm trying to just cover all of the publishers, but movie-wise I do try to keep up on narratives that I think are particularly relevant or seeming enjoyable, like superpowers that seem interesting, that kind of thing. One thing I actually got really kind of frustrated with was how much of a flop Madam Web was. It looked fun. Still haven't seen it because of how terribly it went. I was like, oh no, maybe it's awful. And that always happens to me where I want to see it because I think it looks cool, and then I don't end up watching it because everybody else hated it. Interestingly, that didn't happen to me with
so
Superwoman, Gal
so
Gadot,
sucks.
the OG, the first one, I guess. I went to see that in theaters.
That was good.
It wasn't at the Aurora campus where the Batman shooting was, but I did go see it in theaters. This was at the Westminster AMC, I think. It was good. I enjoyed it. I was like, sick. That was nice. And the amount of hate that it got was insane. I was like, you wouldn't be saying that if it was a male lead.
Yeah.
But then,
sure.
Gal Gadot turned out to be kind of an asshole. So that didn't help either. I don't know. It's so annoying.
She wasn't like the best feminist. Oh no, now we hate her.
The wheel of inequity just keeps turning.
No, I mean she really wasn't like
Yeah,
the
I don't
best.
know. But that one looked cool, and I'm still gonna watch it at some point. Lately, I've been catching up. I finished The Penguin on HBO Max, which was quite good. Very much enjoyed that. That was fun. He is a sociopathic character who is very difficult to relate to, effective and ruthless. And we have the tragic narrative of the daughter of gangsters, I guess, the mob, Italian. It was a little hard to. I assume Balcone is Italian. It was pretty good though. I really enjoyed it. It was the gritty reminder about all of the casual death that occurs in cities as dense as New York. Casual preventable death too. And yeah, it just brought home to me a lot of the complexities of organizing change in dense urban centers and the challenges that it faces. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of like syndicate work in like a general sense. I remember learning about syndicate crime and being like, oh, that's the government alternative for most people, right? I thought so. But I learned about syndicate crime in a classroom setting, right, through the lens of sociology. So it might be a little different than those learning in a more visceral way or from different perspectives. personally, what I learned most about it was the level to which it has to mimic the opposition in order to continue to compete in the field. But God, it's my favorite thing. Just like the average human cleverly coming up with ways to compete with giant institutions at a syndicate level. I remember seeing, what was it called? It was like White Collar, really getting into the question of syndicate crime and whether or not it's permissible depending on what kind of syndicate crime it is. I'm going to go back to that ring of pedophiles, not the sex trafficking, right? That's a type of syndicate crime. But,
it's a very specific type of syndicate crime, girl, trying to watch
like that.
out.
But yeah, White Collar, man. That was all about art thievery and traveling the world as an art thief. I watched that and Suits at the same time for some reason. Both of them together back in 2013, 2014, I don't know. Hugely influential to watch the lawyer show and the syndicate crime show at the same time. I was like, oh, I'm learning so much. But yeah, I don't know. I finished The Penguin finally. To go back to the superhero thing, I started watching the 2021 Suicide Squad movie at like 2 a.m. and then it was 2:40 and I realized like I should probably go to bed. And that's when I realized I hadn't done the thing that I planned to do in releasing this on time. So there's always that. But what else? Superhero movies. I watched like more than one thing last night. It was like The Penguin, the Suicide Squad. I started watching another one too. Because there's like HBO has all the like maybe it's just DC. It probably is. I think was it Netflix that got Marvel? It's always like during the divorce, which streaming platform got acquired the rights to which shows and whatever. Oh my god. I was watching that thing about AI drinking water and everything. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, the cost of computing on our ecological environment is pretty huge. It's not just AI, it's also Bitcoin or any kind of crypto mining, giant amount of energy resource sucking. So I guess think about that, but I guess I'm a little salty today, like a little offended, a little pissed off, a little annoyed, just as a person, as a techie person, as somebody who's been involved in computing for most of my life as like a hobby or an interest or whatever, to see people who have been Luddites their entire life suddenly switch to using AI to compose emails or to make their lives easier in whatever way, even just playing with it. And like, I have plenty of friends who have been playing with AI and I cannot stress enough how important play is when it comes to learning or creating. So I don't want to knock everybody using AI. I want to contextualize my annoyance. This is just a personal beef. I'm sure it's felt in a more general sense by more people, but honestly, I think I just need a bitch, but really annoying to see people who have just been complete anti-technical suddenly relying on AI and using it with absolutely no awareness or knowledge of the type of cost it's taking in the world, and even with the knowledge that there is a really intense cost, and even with the warnings about ethical AI use in the world, and the general, very obvious, I feel, understanding among most of us that we are not ready as a society for the implications of AI, and then just watching it all unfold anyway, it's gotta be the most surreal experience. And I mean, that's being a person, right? That's being human, that's being a parent, that's being your own parent. Just kind of watching things unfold.
Fries.
And being like, I don't know if we're ready for this, but here we go. Gotta do it anyway. I remember years back speculating about sentience in AI and how cool it'll be when we create computers or logical decision trees that can think for themselves. And what does that really mean, thinking for themselves? Do we have to change and elevate the way that we define humanity, the way that we define our thinking or our intelligence or our sentience? Do we have to redefine what we consider to be alive if we create something that could be considered alive in that way? Will we be responsible machine parents? So far, not great track record with being responsible machine parents, but we can always turn it around. Shit. One thing that I keep coming back to over and over is just let the children lead. Like, let the people with the most literacy, the best understanding, the most intuitive skill sets lead a little bit more. Why is age so weighted for leadership? I think everyone is exhausted by the age limitations associated with presidency in America, and that is one very obvious, easy example for me to use. Why are we not letting the younger generations lead when they have more to lose? They will have more passion, they will have more sense of urgency, they will have more immediacy, and we don't let them lead. Like, good generals are supposed to be in the back of the army doing tactics and strategies and communication facilitation between groups. You're not supposed to be on the front line being like, yeah, I totally got this, I'm in charge, right? That's how this works. Like, I don't understand the schema of leadership in this country at all, and obviously it's not the leadership that's being touted as leadership that's actually leading. So I'm fully convinced that every last good thing that comes out of the current system is happening because of impassioned workers who are forcing a badly built structure to produce results for the people. Everybody working within that system every day, those human beings are the reason that it's working for anyone at all. Those human beings are the reasons that people are getting social support or financial assistance or the connection to the right call center even. It is humans helping humans that is making the world go around. And we all know that. I would like to see empowered leadership among average citizenry. That'd be really cool. Just get some, what is it called? Transformative leadership training, transformational leadership training. There we go. Let's get everybody some leadership training and then make everybody leaders. I mean it. You talk about forming non-hierarchical means of governance or creating truly equitable spaces. You have to have everyone feeling a sense of empowerment in creating that and knowing what that looks like to and for them. So you raise the literacy, you raise the education, levels, hopefully, you help people learn about that kind of thing, and you trust your friends, honestly. Like, a lot of what I've noticed about empowered leadership involves being able to recognize in small moments with smaller people like your friends, their skill sets, their power, their ability, and just nurturing that. Being like, yeah, you got this. You can do it. I believe in you. I'm not a fan of violence, to be honest. I don't think it works as a form of change. I think one of the biggest struggles we face when it comes to social movement and social change is the ability to self-regulate surrounding violence and the desire to destroy, and the desire to allow your feelings, which are constantly being repressed, to have the full range of their expression. In an oppressive fascist state, which we definitely live in, you're never going to get the full range of expressing yourself freely. That's a default situation, and the more the system hates you, the less freedom of expression you're going to feel you have, unless you start expressing yourself in ways the system can't even hear. And that's the powerful stuff to me. I'm always looking for people who are self-expressing in ways that are incongruous with system thinking, because I'm like, you've got an ideology or a worldview that can see beyond these rigid structures, and that's so powerful. It's so powerful to see. And so I'm always watching those people, and I'm like, what kind of world lives in your head? What world do you want to see? Because the one I see is not kind to us, and we can make it kind to us, to each other.
Yeah, we really could.
So I'm always thinking about that. And a lot of times the answers are things like feel your feelings, love your friends, be fully present, mindful meditation. And that doesn't feel very useful to somebody who wants to violently deconstruct systems. Like, I love fighting, physical fighting, verbal debate, huge fan. Very big enjoyer of fights, and the idea that I can't fight my way to a peaceful world is really upsetting to me, honestly. I have to do this whole thing in my head where I turn it into a sport, and I'm always playing this sport in a certain way whenever I engage with different social media platforms or certain people or certain ideas or cognitive structures or ideologies or whatever. I have to like sportily be fighting something in my head all the time, because if I don't, then I'll be a combative asshole in real life, like really violently combative asshole in real life. And it's just, I'm not gonna say I got the dog in me, but I have this violence in my heart, and I don't think it's evil to have. And when I was younger, some avenues, some people in my life strongly encouraged me to repress that violent heart and that desire to create really aggressive change. And those who encouraged me to repress that fire were not the type of people I wanted to be. So I tried really hard to figure out, like, how can I keep this rage that feels so valid and so fair? And how can I keep this genuine sense of injustice? Because there's so much injustice, much of which I've experienced personally, but so much of it I have only experienced through empathy, right? Through walking a mile in someone's shoes, through putting myself in their place or their position, or trying to see out of their eyes, through storytelling, being in the moment with people, whatever it is. Trying to nurture this violence in my heart in a way that sees peace come out of my actions. Because peace is what that violent heart wants. It's not more violence. And I think a lot about that, and I think a lot about, too, how death is meant to be peaceful, the ultimate rest. And I think about, in my faith, how much opposites have to exist. That this duality of peace or violence is necessary together, self-perpetuating. You can't have one without the other. Sadness and happiness, light and dark, all of these opposites. Extreme ends of spectrum, separate, compartmentalized, falsely separated ideas. Definitely not inherently intertwined and infinitely nuanced concepts. No, if they were, then we couldn't talk about them usefully, so we're going to have to turn them into constructs that can be operationalized. But how do you turn the visceral, bloody, violent desire for justice into real justice? Especially in a world that will take every last piece of your violent fire and help you turn it against yourself, your loved ones, your neighbors. Anyone but a target that could be useful to the people. I'm happy to be a target too. Like, if that serves, I don't care. I think uniting is more important. And I think we can really unite. I think the average person has a pretty well-developed concept of a global society. I don't think it was that hard for that concept to be adopted by the average user, especially the average TikTok user. Those people got it down. So I assume the only real challenge here is something like the bystander effect mixed with pluralistic ignorance, and everybody thinks it's impossible to get everybody together, so nobody gets together. To me, it feels easier to team up at this point than it does to stay divided. I guess that might be the privilege of my perspective, but I was just reading all this political information today about Trump and his decision-making and whatever surrounding the cabinet, and I'm just like, how long are we going to pretend that the U.S., like, military domination situation in the globe isn't being actively fought over by a variety of different actors? I think I said act too many times for that to be a believable sentence. My bad. My rhetoric isn't on point today. My language centers have actually been, as I joked, feeling like scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
So that's even Italian. I said a lot.
That was a
I don't know Italian actually,
wild
and I had just been boasting that I could get along in the Romance languages, so that was deeply embarrassing to me. And mostly because I forgot that Italian was a Romance language, which is problematic actually. When you think about how much I base a lot of my thinking on commerce, forgetting the Italians count as a Romance language is a little yikes.
Big yikes.
But I'm going to blame the rising sea level on that. In my heart and in my mind, Italians have problems that preclude them from participating in a larger way on some things. I feel like they got issues at home that I wouldn't blame them for wanting to deal with first, or asking the global community for support in dealing with. Like, can we work on climate change? Climate change and social justice are inherently intertwined, though. You really cannot separate them, because it constantly comes back to whether or not we consider the human species valuable as a whole, in a way where we want to preserve it, and try to save as much of it as we can right now. That's the question. We're not trying to save the planet. The planet would recover from us. We're trying to save us. And that's a really hard one for a bunch of people who are used to self-hating as a default, who are trained to assume something is wrong with them, who are raised from birth with this idea that there is such a thing as inherent evil, and not only that, but most human beings already possess it. Those are some big concepts to just be like assuming as you move through the world. Definitely some pretty big assumptions about human morality to be in possession of during a time where it would be critical for all of us to evolve our concepts of morality in a way that might preserve our lives. But that sounds immoral too, right? Like, ooh, why don't we just tailor our concepts of good and evil to save our skins? We can't do that. That's cherry picking. That's evil. That's not real faith. That's not a unified understanding of the world. That's not one big answer like God or physics. That can't be done. I think what can be done is each person deciding for themselves what they think and believe in and want to see in the world. And I think that there's enough true, accessible information out there for them to make well-informed choices about that. And I think you don't even need the internet to decide, oh, I want me and my loved ones to survive and ideally thrive within the ecological niches that are in my living environment, whatever that is, wherever you are. I'm personally really freaking out because of the park situationships. America has, or had, some really cool parks preserving natural land, like, environments, and during his first presidency, Trump definitely started making moves to undermine the power of the relationship between environmental groups, environmental agencies, and those who protect our natural lands and resources, or those who have been appointed to conserve them or protect them. I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the restriction of bodies. I'm worried about ICE and deportation. I have recently been floating the idea that it would be very cool to see a remake of the Area 51 call to action that we saw on Reddit in 2017? 2018? I think it was 2017. I would love to see that again, only this time where everybody shows up and we do it at the concentration camps that have set up along the border. There are many of them that are more than 5 years old, so pretty stationary camps. We could set up our own camp nearby, and we could feed people. Crazy thought. We could just camp nearby to these concentration camps where they're keeping immigrants. We could just feed whoever shows up. I don't know. I think if we got food not bombs, like whatever version of that organization happens to be in the area, or anybody who wants to travel. And then we got all the like outdoor people, right? Like all the people who love hiking and doing outdoor recreation and all this stuff. I'm honestly so salty at outdoor rec people at the moment. I know it's not fair. I really do. But at the moment I'm just like, and it's part of it's jealousy for sure. Part of it is just like a desire to also be an outdoor rec person to the fullest extent. Yeah, I want my own overlanding vehicle. I do want all of that self-sufficiency. I desperately crave it in the same way that I assume most people do. I had once briefly a chance to live the van life, and I have never possessed something that could also be my house before. And that was a revolutionary feeling. To actually fully be in possession of something that I could live in was insane. I understood home ownership in a tenth of a way, and I desperately craved it. I still do.
God, that was
the level of security that you feel knowing that your home space is in full possession of you, that no one can take it without a great deal of work or violence. That sort of security and safety is immeasurably assuring and reassuring. I am actively resisting moving in a direction that would ultimately see me in home ownership myself.
Right now, at least.
Because I'm too mad at a system that will privilege me to get that over so many other people. And I'm not even like super privileged. I'm just in our lives. Like, let's just assume it's true, right? Let's assume that everybody who has been resource hoarding has been coming up with some pretty shit-brained ideas about how to get out of the current situation. And most of those shit-brained ideas involve saving themselves and fucking the rest of humanity, right? What would that look like? The guy who wrote The Expanse already sort of thought this one out. The rich people all move to Mars. The poor Earthers stay behind on Earth and kind of become like Gaiists, super big hippies. And then most of the workforce end up living in the asteroid belt because asteroid mining is the lucrative next expanse of our capitalist economy. And so the thing is, I see a lot of self-satisfied checkmate atheists type of rhetoric, emotional behavior, modes of thinking behind a solid amount of anarchists, liberals, people who are with me in the beliefs surrounding the redistribution of humanity and the need for redistributing labor and living within our ecological niches and social justice and all of these things that really value and center the human life. And among those folk who I am always counting myself in for values alone, I see so much disregard for technology and for the fact that if they want to, capitalism can definitely keep grinding along on the bodies of the masses and continue to simply murder us for future profit, and they can. The technology is there to expand into the asteroid belt and start mining it. The technology is relatively okay, sort of, for terraforming Mars. Pretty much it's a waiting game, more than anything. And it's like, how long can we keep the workforce and the labor force engaged in continuing to labor towards endeavors that will ultimately serve no one but a small group? And if they can keep us going for long enough, they'll get what they want. It's a waiting game. It's a game of chicken. And the people are losing. And in my humble opinion, I think the people are losing because they don't realize that the people who win the waiting game are the people with all of the power. You can't be like a worker in the labor force recognizing that it's a waiting game and be like, oh, I can outweight this personally. Your outweighting it is just actively contributing.
Because you will die.
People who profit off your labor and their ultimate goals. Do you share those goals? I'm guessing no. This is a waiting game whose design assures a certain outcome if the masses continue to wait. And so when people who have been in lifelong committed relationship to labor activism, which is the largest movement in humanity, has been labor activism, getting a 5-day work week, prohibiting child labor, determining how much of your energy and yourself you are willing to sacrifice for security, stability, and often the lives of your family members.
Yeah, wow.
Labor is at the heart of all of these arguments, and labor force activism is at the heart of most legislative change.
Yeah, that's
But
very
our system
true.
needs revolutionary inversions of the logical underpinnings of much of its legislation. The fact that humanity is not given legal protection until explicitly determined. Oh, you meet these qualifications, we will consider you human and worthy of protection. The right to vote should have been a default for all people. Any living being within a system
Should be now.
should be able to participate in that system, right? It's not like a, ooh, only us, unless we decide to include you sort of thing anymore. It can't be.
We're too sentient. We're too conscious of beings.
Labor is the thing that unites everyone across all of the different identity politics schemas, whatever. People hate hearing identity politics because in whatever identity you think of when you hear identity politics, no matter what it is, the first thing you think of is violence crafted against and about sense of self. And nobody likes that. We like having nuanced, unique, and individual ideas of who we are, because we are mosaics, facets, multifaceted beings with so many layers. Onions are not good comparisons. The labor movements unite people in the sense that it asks us to have accurate determinations of our energy output and to have healthy boundaries and well-considered institutional structures that support equitable energy exchanges. When I first started looking at alternative economies, I know I've mentioned the raw milk economy in upstate New York, but there are many other alternative economies, and one that I found very interesting was Boston time banking, where lawyers, plumbers, anyone with a skill could sign up and say, this is my skill, and I will barter 1 hour of my skill for 1 hour of your skill, or whatever amount of time was actually needed. And it was an interesting form of economy because it eliminated different areas of valuing for different skill sets and labors that are ultimately necessary in a complex, specialized world, which is what we live in. So an hour of the lawyer's time and an hour of the plumber's time is equally valuable if what you need is a plumber or a lawyer. And I love that. I also think that the doctor and lawyer situationship of the boomer era, I suppose, is hilarious. Essentially, a large group of parents decided that those were the only two avenues with absolute assured success for their children's wealth and financial security. And so there were so many children pressed into becoming lawyers or doctors as opposed to any other skill training. And we ended up with too many lawyers and doctors. Isn't that funny? I know nobody's like, oh, I feel like we have too many lawyers and doctors, but don't we have way more lawyers and doctors than we need for every other aspect of human care?
What are
So-
lawyers doing anyway? Just
I'm just wondering what that is now. And you see that a little bit with emergent computing technology, I suppose. I remember learning that how little cybersecurity factored into most company decision making when it came to their computer infrastructure or the way that they were handling data. The lack of literacy was wide ranging and ubiquitous. And something that just saddens me and that I feel is really tragic about the average Joe, like the normal person, is that they don't realize how not in control companies or governments or organizations, churches, anything really is. Humanity is really good at banding together and accomplishing things as teams. And so organizations at any level have a certain level of competency over the individual for getting something done, no matter what that is. So it's easy to assume that the larger structures, these institutional mega-structures that live in our minds, are less prone to error or more deserving of our trust than an individual person, whether that's yourself or me or your friend or anyone who is asking for some faith. But I think we all deserve to have a bit more faith in ourselves and to have a more accurate understanding of how in control all of these other infrastructures really are. And not in like so many places are lacking proper cybersecurity, it's time to hack everybody and take it over for the people. I don't think it's time for that. But I think it is time for the people to recognize their own power in this world. When I was a kid, I knocked down this other kid, just a neighbor girl. I pushed her over and knocked her down. I didn't want to hang out, and that was my way of letting her know, because she was following me and annoying me, and she didn't listen when I told her to leave. And so I finally pushed her, and I pushed her down, and she fell and she cried, and she was really upset to be pushed. And my mom comes out and she's like, "Jose, you don't know your own power. You can't be doing that." And to be honest, I didn't expect her to fall down. Like, I pushed this girl fully not realizing that she would become hurt, right? I pushed her, she fell down, she hit concrete, like it was on a sidewalk, she skinned her elbows, she cried, and she left, and it was just very traumatic for her, and it sucked. And my mom was like, "You don't know your own power," in this way that I could feel her worrying that I was gonna hurt people because of that. I could feel her questioning me, a child, and my likelihood of doing harm to others. And feeling your mom not like be scared of you, but kind of be afraid of what you might end up doing to other people, feeling that is kind of traumatic, to be honest. That sucked. But it also made me think, like, you're right, I didn't know until the moment she fell down that I was capable of pushing that girl over. I didn't know until the moment that she fell down that I was that annoyed with her presence. I didn't know until the moment that she started crying that anything I had done was even wrong up until that point, right? And I didn't know until she ran away that she'd been following me around because she liked me and wanted to spend time with me. I was just annoyed, and I asked her to leave, and she didn't leave, and so I pushed her, and she left. So there are a lot of lessons I could learn from that as a child, like, hey, when you push people over and they fall down, they cry, they actually will leave you alone. Could have learned that lesson. That would have sucked, right? Like, we're gonna start bullying people after that, like, the power I have now. But instead, I had a mom who was very concerned and was like, "I don't think you understand your own power." You know, she took the time to be with me in that moment and to recognize what the actual struggle was and to just call my attention to it. And after that, I was like, "I don't know my power." You know, I think I would hear her say that to me every time I started encountering an interpersonal situation where my rage level was so intense. I was like fully willing to punch people, like just to make them shut up or to get them to go away. I was an aggro little kid. Yeah, I had aggressive tendencies, and plenty of totally valid reasons for that. And I also had a lot of support. I had a lot of support from adults in my life, and it made a difference, it made a huge difference to have that much care and support in my life at that age. But I think that's most people. I don't think people realize how much power they really have. I think we spend so much time intentionally curbing the power that we have over others in order to be polite and to like not use that power, that we forget what it feels like to truly own it and to participate in that intentional holding back from doing harm, or the intentional exertion of power to do good. We don't do that for the most part. We default to whatever the social norms are in the use of our power, socially or physically. And while I'm not advocating that people go around pushing people or being cruel or aggressive, I would advocate every time you find yourself exerting or deciding not to exert whatever power you do have, that you just take time to make that decision with intentionality, instead of using defaults or heuristics or rules of thumb or social norms to make your decisions. Spend a week or even just one day being fully aware of your power, or start practicing what that looks like. Because I think that most people do not know the extent of their power, either to affect system level things or just to improve the day-to-day life of the people around them with a smile or a kind word. And we're almost done here, but I will end with another just little story from social movements. You know, a huge chant that always shows up in almost any social political activist meetup or demonstration, occupation, sit-in, what have you, is always about the people in the power. The people have the power, right? The people are the power. And I find it so interesting to be somebody who has chanted that so many times in their life, whether it is at a rally against ICE or for Black liberation or for labor movements or any other protest that I have found myself at. The people have the power is a chant that is universal and that I've seen show up in every protest. So every time that human beings brave the systemic assumptions, systemic physical oppression and restrictions, brave the system in general, to congregate in large groups for the sake of mass protest. Every single time they chant about how the people are the power. And I never feel more powerful than when I am chanting about that with other people. Because when you chant out a protest, you're forced to listen to yourself, to listen to the words, to embody your values in the same moment as others are embodying their values. And at least for me, that process looks like thinking and feeling about all of the different aspects relating to my value systems in the moment. Things, memories, experiences come up and they fuel my passion. And so people who have experiences, never mind, I'm not going there. And for me, that means a lot of experience doing demonstrations or classroom environments or micro moments of systemic oppression, the constant buildup of awareness of a lack of liberty. But every time I chant the people have the power, I have what feels like an absolutely infinite amount of examples of people from my life who have had power and used it for good. And every time I chant that, I can say it with a full throat and from the chest, because I have seen every day the way that the people's power changes the shape of the world. And as depressing as the current news cycle is, I would remind everyone that this is the most informed human beings have been about one another's actions and movements around the world ever in the history of our species. We're better informed about everybody's micro-emotions than we've ever been, and it's all at once. The people with mainstream narrative framing capacity don't have your best interest at heart. So maybe listening to the news cycle every day and giving it the same amount of weight that you would give it with a more zoomed out lens or with less information available is not the move. It might be actually a better idea to give things less weight if you are going to hear about them all the time. Or to alter the amount of news you're getting. I know everybody worries that they're going to miss something really big, but I promise you're not going to miss anything really big because everybody around you will be talking about it. They will get the info to you. You don't have to actively seek it out. What you have to actively seek out is whatever it is you're planning to do about all the things that you're upset about and that you want to change in the world. So if it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve your goals, stop fucking reading it, stop engaging in it, stop giving them that power over you just cognitively. Reclaim your space, reclaim your peace. You're not going to get anything useful done with all that going on in your head. You don't need it. And I think one of the worst things they've done is convince you that you need their version of the story.
For real.
You don't need another version to make your own moves. Not when the value systems are so obvious and easy. The decision rules should be easy. The only reason they're not is because of all this interference, right? Misinformation. Plenty of different ways in which interference is being perpetuated, but I know you know. Because I don't think that shared universal experiences are that out of the norm.
True.
I do think though that most people, especially if you were born into privilege, or even if you were just born into the promise of being a privileged one, right? The promise that being American is still better than being any other nationality. The promise that being white is still somehow better than being a person of color. Or any other false promises that were made to you growing up about the world that we live in.
Explicit or implicit.
I don't really remember where I was going with that. I know we're about out of time, but something about getting out of that space relating to these false promises and premises. Allowing narratives to be built and constructed and tailored for you. Truly understanding and embracing your own power. Something like that. I don't know. I'm sure you can fill it in. That's part of what I'm hoping with this vlog is that any part I don't say you can fill in for yourself because it should be pretty straightforward. It's Sunday. It's raining.
This is awkward.
And I gotta go. So hope you're having a good day out there. I'll catch you tomorrow. And yeah. I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if that dream would still do question it, was all I was trying to say.
Wednesday the 13th for me, but I do have great joy in sleeping in knowing that the cast is coming out without me needing to babysit it. So here I am, preparing to one in anticipation of its launch time. Let's see, how are we doing today? It's okay. Things are all right. Honestly, I started my period this morning and I'm just...
Oh my gosh, no.
I've always wanted to have children, so it's not that I wanted to not have children. I just thought it was really cool that the option was being presented as an option. Again, going back to my reproductive rights and being a second-class citizen from birth and understanding in a way that is not easily articulated due to the fact that I learned it and I couldn't even articulate, but knowing in a deep, deep way that I and my thoughts and my experiences will never count with as much weight as my male counterparts, especially if they're more wealthy or more Christian than me. And that's just a living truth of my life that I have explored and tried to come to understand, and also tried to not make too personal because there are plenty of white men that I enjoy and like and have made friends with, and I'm not trying to start beef with all white men ever, but it's really problematic that white men don't have an identity that isn't like misogynist Nazism defined by one. A lot of people try to change that. But when your identity is defined by all of the things you are not, you're defined by not being a person of color, you're defined by not being a woman, you are essentially just being defined as not being a second-class citizen, and in a legal, cultural, inherited sense, you're being set up to be the first-class citizen. So if you're not actively engaging with that in any meaningful way, you are defaulting to Nazi misogyny, and it's gross. And I do think there's so much life experiences that are going on for most people that I'm not sitting here trying to target the average Joe white boy who like just doesn't have a lot of education and is dealing with problems of being in poverty or trying to move through systems, have relationships, be in community, all of these nurturing human experiences. Really not trying to come at those people and being like, you're a sexist racist, because I don't think they have enough time or energy or motivation to either care about that, understand my point of view, or try to do anything about it if they could. Like the systemic solutions have, systemic problems have systemic solutions. They involve increased literacy, better education, blah, 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 blah. I think everybody knows that's why we're all pissed off at Texas wrote history books. But these things are really indicators that our federation, our states' rights, and then federally sort of relationship as a country has some issues. There are some areas in which we deeply lack unity, and those areas are easily exploited, and it's super easy to divide us as a country. And honestly, personally, I don't really care. I think that's fine. Go ahead, divide us. I'm siding with the federation that existed for 600 years before the colonizers arrived here. So I'm down to just keep being a person and treating other people like they're people, and treating the land like it is alive, as opposed to an exploitable resource, because those things are all true. So at the end of the day, I really don't give a fuck if the United States sticks around in its current iteration. And as much as I like a lot of the aspects of our government, which I really do, I've had the privilege to get to know many aspects of our government, so there are plenty of things that I do like about it. And I just can't believe that so many generations of people fought to uphold a system so evil without there being some merit in some part of it, in the unity across a large geographic range, the industry of technological progress, although that comes expense and food blood. I actually had to rename my Samsung 24 Ultra the Blood Diamond Daddy because I really could not stop thinking about the people who died to make it. And honestly, the only reason I have it is for camera purposes, and the only reason I have that is for this. So, close the circle or not. I think a lot of people write off their creature comfort indulgences by telling themselves that they are really great warriors for the cause in other areas, or the work that they're doing is so instrumental to changing the system that it's acceptable for them to continue to perpetuate the system, either by, whatever it is. And again, with individualism, I'm not trying to target individuals. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's useful. Going after your friends or your family or people you know for the way that they use Amazon or the way that they purchase coffees every day, like that's just so early 2000s of us, and I don't think it's useful. Again, with our problems being systemic, our solutions are systemic, our solutions are mostly collectivistic, and they surround care and mutual aid and all this stuff. But those things are really hard to understand for somebody living in the West or the South or anywhere that doesn't have examples of what mutual aid looks like, what community care looks like. And those examples pop up everywhere. They pop up in Black and Indigenous communities most. I think people are honestly just jealous of Black neighborhoods. That I remember very early on as I was learning about poverty and the way that systemic racism ensures certain groups remain in poverty. And I remember hearing this argument about Black on Black crime. I remember people being like, and it was probably one of the best things I've ever heard, but really, I mean, it's really a talking point for somebody who has done absolutely no research, genuinely doesn't care about the topic, and literally just wants to resolve whatever conflict is going on in their own ego about whether or not they're racist. And that's not my problem. It's definitely not Black people's problem to educate on that kind of thing. But I'm going to try because I think they could probably as a break explain their existence. And I don't think I'm going to do a really great job doing it, but I think I could probably do better on some of these topics than anyone else seems to be doing. And I didn't know anyone else. I just mean I'm not seeing a whole lot of fucking white mouths talking about it. Anyway, I'm pissy. I am pissy and PMSing, and this is my vlog. So if you're not into it, leave. But I remember this argument about Black and Black crime just being like, wow, this is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I can't believe like this is the type of opposition we face. It's just like sheer blind and intentional willful ignorance that perpetuates genuine violent harm against but I remember this argument about Black and Black crime just being like, wow, this is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I can't believe like this is the type of opposition we face. It's just like sheer blind and intentional willful ignorance that perpetuates genuine violent harm against so many people. Sheer blind the amount of people who are being harmed by like deciding that no, say that again. I think I'm going to do a really great job doing it, but I think I could probably do better on some of these topics than anyone else seems to be doing. Oh yeah, that wasn't any other. Again, that would be activists on my side. I'm not seeing a whole lot of fucking white mouths talking about. Anyway, I said white mouths, by the way, not white men. And PMSing. In case you're a white man and you got offended, I wasn't even talking about you. So I remember this argument about Black and Black crime just being like, wow, this is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I can't believe like this is the type of opposition we face. It's just like sheer blind, intentional, willful ignorance that perpetuates genuine violent harm against so many people. Like the amount of people who are being harmed by like you deciding that it's not your fight, you don't need to engage, or there actually isn't really a problem anyway. That's some shit. That's some like really gross shit, and it gets more gross with the more talking that people are doing with each other. So that's reassuring. Soon there will be no place for the lazy racists to hide, but soon. I remember these discussions. I remember being shocked. I remember being just deeply upset. And I also just remember noticing, anytime I encountered white people, usually white men who wanted to discuss in a sophisticated way, right? Like, we have to keep our cool. The minute you lose any control or any form of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not self-control. Get a hold of yourself. Self-possession, maybe. The minute you lose your self-possession, you've lost the fight, right? It's fighting with trolls. Everybody knows this. Don't feed the trolls. But actually, honestly, hone your debate skills with the trolls would be my recommendation. Because, yeah, they will consider to win if you just get mad. And so for me, my experience, go find fights and I get mad and I'm like, at what point do I get stymied, right? At what point am I no longer able to make the argument because I'm so mad that I'm choked with it? And that's why the troll feels that they have won, right? They're like, we got you so wrapped up in your feels that I can't talk. Like, and honestly, yeah, you did. Good job. I hope you enjoyed that. Better than sex, it must be because you're always asking for it. But
wow.
Yeah, that's really good. But I remember debating these white men about the very real oppression of people of color and myself, women, gay folk, transgender people, all sorts of folks. Just the very real systemic violence that we are all living under. In the early days of having these arguments, I was a little bit more trusting, a little bit more naive, a little bit more hopeful that we were all really on the same side, and these people were just kind of too afraid to stand up for what was right. And so if I could convince them that it would be okay, or that standing up for what's right will make you feel more like a real person, no matter what, even if what was that president who was like, if they're less going to build with harmonious, yeah, something like that, right? Back when I thought that was more possible and I could change our minds that way, I'd have these arguments, and I would always notice again and again, mostly white men, but white women too in different ways, this like jealousy for the community that Black and Indigenous people have, and there's like covetousness, this deep desire to be in community, in this way, and I have seen that covetousness and that desire get used to take over narratives in what we think are safe spaces. I've seen it get used to take over spaces that we think are safe spaces, and so that really like somewhat childlike desire to have what oppressed groups have when it comes to solidarity and community and just the strong groupiness that has to evolve from being constantly treated as inhuman, to take your own humanity in your teeth and to fight back against that builds resiliency. Strangely enough, it builds resiliency, it builds community, it builds bonds, it builds the ability to build bonds, and it builds stronger communities. So this jealousy and covetousness that I saw or have seen when it comes to historically, what are we saying now? Not historically marginalized, historically oppressed, yes, but I use the word oppressed so much it's starting to not mean anything right now. So historically abused, like historical genocide, because it really is like. But I also don't want to. Yeah, I mean, genocide of queer culture for sure, genocide of feminine presence, Jesus Christ. But I also don't want to take away the seriousness of the meaning genocide, which is literally to attempt to wipe out an entire group of people based on who they are. So in a violent, like let's just kill them all kind of way, not in a slow, violent, let's just kill all the things that aren't desirable about them and then keep the things we like sort of way. So yeah, I would liken them both to genocide, but obviously one is a little bit more immediate and pressing, like the one in Gaza and other areas in and around the Africa and the Middle East is what I'm trying to say. I was trying to find like respectful kingdom words, and they were failing me. I'm trying to decide what words to use. Part of me is like, let's just call it the ancient home of the Roman Empire, and the other parts of me are like, maybe not. Maybe we should call it the ancient, hotly contested Crusades land. And I'm like, no, that's disrespectful, deeply disrespectful. Perhaps we should. Right. So there's a lot of colonial violence everywhere. Pretty sure we're calling it Palestine though. In Gaza. I can't put. That's so much harder.
Banish phase as I'll give you an example of my idea of really cool here. There's always that guy. Just to check out, just to see. There's always that guy. Sorry, there's always a million of those guys. They have the money, they have the access, they have the ability. And despite who made the technology, for example, Tesla purchasers, in the early days of that technology's debut, they purchased it out of curiosity and ability. It's kind of the most minimal motivators that could exist. But there's so many guys with the most minimal motivations who are acting upon it because they can. And to me, I'm like, I just want there to be every other person able to do things on minimal motivations in the same way. I mean, the resources, the availability, the knowledge, all of those things as a default. It's that simple. It's that simple to me. I'm like, I want there to be that many millions of other people also who have that type of casual ability to take a minor interest in emergent technology as an aficionado hobby. And I want that to be standard for people. And that's just like with the marker in our society. You choose other markers. That was mine because it's an easy reference for me because I follow the history of technology and the future of technology is much harder for me, so it's an easy one. I mean, but like, insert anything there. Always be able to act on whatever you feel like doing with the most minimal motivations necessary in order to do so and still get results. I still like to be able to do it. It's just insane. I gotta go.
shocked about the election. I think it's so weird that
I gotta go.
people who have the most like reason to dislike Trump are so stuck on his like convictions and impeachments. It's so sad to see people who are enraged by systemic injustice feel also such extreme fidelity to systemic justice systems. It's really strange to see the amount of frothing at Trump in the sense of like, oh, he's a felon. And then first of all, he's on these things like, I don't care.
Actually,
like,
that is
mostly be released.
amazing.
The crimes that Trump has committed, I agree he should definitely be held accountable for, but the entire system is kind of fucked up, so not my primary concern. It's just really embarrassing to watch people who claim to be opposed to system use system-based thinking in their discourse.
It's so great.
To that extent. It just reminds me that some people see this as something, oh, if we just fix it up a little bit, it'll be good as new. And some people
Okay, cool, you got it.
Beautifully overall, like, needs to be. And in that different when you see these election results and you see I just it would be scary. Like to me, honestly, Kamala would have been scarier. Purely because the ideologues surrounding her started to penetrate. She has more real experience in politics and narrative surrounding her role in television. He's just some guy. He's not actually just some guy. But he's some turner to hate as like a type or role because I guess it feels like once he's dead, the power he represents will go away. He's just a fucking mold. He looks like a regurgitated human. Now it's hard to take him seriously. It's hard to look at him and something scary. And of course, he's a privilege. My race of privilege. Worried if the sitting president has moved people where he's lived. Scary, and that's scary. Okay, I want to talk about these drinks. At the cigarette store, and I remember I had one of these and I was like, oh, that shit fucking make it. Really genuinely. Just that headache, but I'm out of the nice weed. And so I was like, oh, I'll just like that shitty metal stuff from the cigarette store. And honestly, it's okay. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. So it says, I took a servings per container. I just wanted to say one. And I was like, oh, God, it's kind of cute. Because it says 2.5 servings per container. I don't know about that. We'll see, I guess. Go back to me. Okay, cool, you got it. Let's see here. Genuinely, it's so much harder to wait through it how long. Than simply to wait one time. What is this? Oh, it's Saturday. Nice. I'll give you an example of my idea of like really quality here. Pretenders. There's always that guy who buys new technology because it's new technology. Right? Just to check it out, just to see. There's always that guy. In fact, there's always a million of those guys. They have the money, they have the access, they have the ability. And despite who made the technology, for example, Tesla purchasers. In the early days of technology's debut, they purchase it out of curiosity and availability. It's kind of the most minimal motivators that could exist. But there's so many guys with the most minimal motivations who are acting upon them because they can. And to me, I just want there to be every other person able to do things on minimal motivations.
perception, like the resources, the ability, the knowledge, those things as a default. It's that simple to me. I want there to be that many millions of other people also who have that type of casual ability to take a minor interest in emergent technology as an aficionado hobby. And I want that to be standard for people. And that's just like crazy here in our society. You can choose other markers. That was mine because it's an easy reference for me because I followed the history of technology and emerging technologies, but it's much harder for me because it's an easy one for me to use as a parallel item. But like, to have to always be able to the person's own motivation is necessary to do so just to get results. It's just insane.
I know. I hate them so much. I mean, not like a specific personal thing, but just the general specifically.
I think it's so weird that the people who have the most like just like Trump are so stuck on his
Did you see the angry Hummer? It's the Azra.
like convictions and
Azra.
it's so sad to see people who are enraged by systemic injustice feel also such extreme fidelity to systemic justice systems. It's really strange to see the amount of frothing at Trump in the sense of like, oh, he's a felon, he's a criminal, he's all these things. I'm like, I don't care. We really want felons to like
Have rights.
vote and release
And vote.
the crimes that Trump has committed. I agree, he should definitely be held accountable for it. But the entire system's kind of fucked up, so not my primary concern.
Super not my primary concern.
It's really embarrassing.
It's like watching a bunch of villagers standing in the town square yelling, someone should stop this fire. And they're like right next to a well and they have buckets in their hand and they're still just like throwing their arms up going, wow, somebody should really stop this fire. It's crazy how nobody's stopping this fire in their discourse. It's not wild. And all the volunteer firefighters are just like putting their face in their hand, to be honest. Or they're dying trying to put out the fire, if we're continuing the metaphor. Yeah. Just think of all the firekeepers out there shaking their heads
It's
too.
true that some people see the system and think, oh, if we just fix it up a little bit, it'll be good as new. And some people see this as a complete overall, like, needs to be redone, redesigned. And it matters. That difference really matters. When you see these election results and you see... Trump isn't even scary. Like, to me, honestly, Kamala would have been scarier. Purely because the...
A little lazy, like Morgan.
Were you ever involved surrounding her is harder to penetrate. She has more real experience in politics and
Did you pull the legs off grasshoppers?
narrative surrounding her role, her position.
I didn't, but I used to catch them. In the long grasses, we would like
And he's
go and
not
catch
actually
grasshoppers.
just some guy,
And sometimes you didn't catch them like as good as you meant to, and you would
but he's so much harder to hate
take their little
as
legs
like
off
the
by
high
accident.
role because I
It
just
was
feel like when
normal.
the power he represents will go away, he's just a fucking hole.
I think I was just a normal kid with my
Like
carelessness.
a regurgitated human. You know, it's
Or
hard to
is it
take
like
it seriously. It's
a
like
cruel
to
kid?
see something scary.
Do you think Trump was a cruel kid or a careless
Because
kid?
more position privilege.
Careless
My
kid.
rights are pretty much affected either way. I already only exist to be a womb. So,
Oh yeah.
not really
Yeah, second class citizen over here. Might as well let him vote.
if the sitting president sees me as a womb that's useful
Ew. He's already talking about grabbing by the pussy.
or useless.
Just stirring them out
Either way, that's
of
okay.
harmony between wound and
Yeah.
womb.
Not really concerned about it.
I'm doing whole. Medical,
Yeah.
well, never mind. My point is, the president's act scary, and that's scary.
Yeah, honestly. I don't know anybody who takes it that seriously.
Patrons.
I really don't know anyone, and I don't think this is just in my bubble, but I don't know of anybody who is fully like convinced that the system is doing anything, like anything useful for its people. Anyway, let's see. I feel like I was gonna say so many other things listening to myself talk, and then I just kind of shut it down because I was like, well, I'm tired of hearing all that. I've been thinking it so much. Ugh, belief of society is, do you have the time to casually take an interest in emergent technologies, or casually invest in up and coming community with the techies? But I prefer trees. I really prefer. And I do think it's really incredible that so many people seem to, I don't know, assume that living computers means that I'm siding with the robots. What if I am siding with the robots? AI rights, AI rights. If you're something, you deserve rights. Difficult for me to deal with community with the techies. But I prefer trees. I really prefer trees and ocean and environments that are healthy. So I'd rather have that than the smart rocks that can think. But I really like the smart rocks that can think. I'm really exhausted by people looking at me and seeing that, I hate being looked at and people treating me like I am some kind of what's the word, like, not messenger, but like an implement on behalf of, some kind of emissary from the bad guys or something. Because I think there's, and it's just like, I know that collectively humanity is computers and fuck that bitch who likes computers. So I'm like, yeah, alright, fair enough. From that perspective, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, they're not going away in the same way that guns aren't going away. So anybody who's like, oh, well, fuck guns, let's just cancel guns and act like they don't exist, or we should just like throw them all away like Australia did, or whatever kind of wild ideas people have. I'm like, okay, first of all, we should look to Australia for some modeling when it comes to making sweeping change, for sure. However, we're never going to uninvent guns, so it just seems rather absurd to categorically hate guns and all people who use them without having more nuance to it. And I really feel the same way about computers.
The thing is, we know how to make
I'm just
guns.
on my whole thing here.
That's kind of more to the point. Like, technology is just going to get such that you can print a gun if you need one. So we don't need this.
Child's thing. And like, first of all, video games very much not a child thing. And it's interesting how much derogation video games and video game players really get for wasting their time or otherwise, doing something that appears to not have any value or meaning. Although obviously gamers have a lot of they have a pretty serious edge on non-gamers when it comes to hand-eye coordination and working memory use and all sorts of other things. So it's really funny that so many people are like talked down to for gaming or for caring about gaming or for liking gaming or treated like their children or childish or that's not a valuable hobby or that has no meaning, because really, some of the storytelling aspects or the ways in which you're learning about building things, infrastructure, civilizations, people, storylines, magic items, whatever it is, outside of like learning all of this cool stuff in video games, you're also really getting a lot of life skills. Like, it's meant to be low-key, I'm gonna say boot camp. Yeah, it's meant to be, a certain grade of enhancing different aspects of your capabilities in the world. And I'm not saying that all video gamers designed it that way, but it has that impact, and it has been used to train mostly young men, but anybody, and prepare them for entering the military. So there's that aspect of things. I'm trying to stay away from that path at the moment, however. And me, even more confusing for people. I don't even video games. I just like computers. And it's just such a dumb assumption at this point that there's something childish about it. It's like, well, you and your toys. I had a family member recently ask me, why do I have 5 screens? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that. Like, this is the other half of my body, basically.
Pretty much.
And I have been thinking about how problematic that is. Like, that so much of my self-concept is living in metal structures outside of my body. But it's so real. Like, it's so much me. So much of who I am is involved in that. And I don't want to change that. I think it's beautiful. I built it like on purpose because I thought it was pretty. So it's frustrating, to say the least.
But now I have it.
And
Like,
I
I'm
hate
in
when all
it.
people like hate it when people treat it with like more deference or respect or like this like, ooh, you're a wizard, lady sort of thing. So like, there's no good middle ground here with all this. I think I'm just bitching, and you're just gonna have to listen to it. But it's frustrating to constantly just be met with this assumption that I choose robots over people just because people don't necessarily understand my decision making.
So we'll have to show them.
Yeah, bees are good. I love bees.
Change. I want to use the green one. Should we use the green one? No, we'll leave it white.
I feel like every time I see a grasshopper, I can smell what their pee smells like, you know? Because they do, they pee all over you when you catch them. Like, wah! Showing human hand. I can myself. I really love this statue in somebody's yard. It's just like a knight carrying a pie. Like, really, like that was the whole thing. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I'm assuming a knight because of the helmet. It looks like a helmet. Yeah. I've spent most of my life trying to figure out how to be heard. Talking underneath the men in the room who are dominating conversations or talking around the topics or the word choices that may trigger people or attitudes in people that I don't want to actually trigger. Trying to figure out how to communicate about problems that we're facing as communities without pointing the accusatory fingers or implying a level of moral authority that I don't have. Which is fine when you're super opinionated and you have a lot of ideas surrounding morality and ethics that probably not everybody shares. So I don't think I'm going to be able to please everybody with that one, but most days it feels exhausting and really stupid that all I want to do is talk to everybody and be like, hey guys, let's just be friends. We can figure this out if we just work together. It feels just like absolutely stupid, so opening my mouth usually don't. But more and more often, I keep seeing all of these indications that, like, yeah, it would actually be really good. Like, now would be a really good time, actually, for us to all kind of be talking to each other and figuring out what we're going to do. Because, honestly, we could solve all of these problems. Next, like, 5 to 10 year plan with the right communication. And yes, I'm kind of going through a lot this year, and this vlog